Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to another episode in my series reviewing and recapping every single book in the Animorphs series. I'm sorry this is a little bit late, but we're talking about Animorphs 42, The Journey. After the nonsense of last episode, I'm pretty sure this is either going to be another mess or more emotionally devastating. We'll find out which. We're on another Rachel book, the last of which involved Rachel taking charge and almost dooming everyone, so I'm interested to see where this goes. We open with Rachel in Elephant Morph fighting a controller in a Dunkin' Donuts uniform. He's got a Draken beam, but it's not doing much against Elephant Rachel. As ever, I'm going to skip Rachel's recap at the start of the book because you can just go back and watch the playlist. The current issue is that the Yeeks are working on building portable Kandrone arrays, which would mean no Yeeks would have to return to the Yeek pool quite so often. Bad for the Animorphs, they can't figure out who's a controller, they don't know who they can trust, which is why they are in this what is disguised as a Dunkin' Donuts bakery, taking down the Yeeks as the Animorphs do. Marco's been surrounded by controllers, so Rachel charges in there to help. They haven't seen her somehow, so it's a bit of a surprise to them. Jake tells everyone to bail, as apparently they only have 3 minutes left in Morph, which is cutting it a lot closer than they normally do. So anyway, they've dealt with the controllers, Rachel starts to demorph, and then, just as she's halfway through demorphing, there's a camera flash. Someone, they don't know who yet, has taken a photo of them demorphing. Now, again, playlist if you want to understand properly why that's bad news. Rachel hears footsteps running away and Jake sends Tobias after the paparazzo. Because this would be such a disaster, Rachel decides to morph to Eagle and help Tobias. She finds our hawky boy, who says that it was some kid with a disposable camera, but he hasn't managed to track him. He lost him in some kind of building that has pigeon cages on the roof. It's getting dark, which isn't the best for people in Eagle or Hawk morph, but the others are coming in Owl morph to back them up. It starts raining and the kid hasn't come out of the building, so they arrange to have shifts on who's going to watch the building to see who he is when he comes out, if he's a controller or not. Nothing happens, and at 8:30 on Saturday morning, they all meet in Cassie's barn to regroup. It's still raining, they're feeling a little bit grumpy. Everyone is there except Axe, who is currently on his surveillance shift. They found the apartment in the building where the kid lives, and they think the camera is on his desk. It's a big risk going in to get it. There's a lot of people in that building, some of whom could be controllers, the kid himself could be a controller. Jake is just starting to set out the plan when, in a bit of a twist, a remote-controlled car drives in with a spaceship mounted to the front. The ship looked way too familiar. Insignificant creatures, give us the power source and learn to accept your fate as our eternal slaves. We will not crush and annihilate you as we will crush and annihilate all the inferior species of this planet. Oh man, I said. You've got to be kidding, not these guys again. It's the tiny aliens! The Helmacrons are back. We first saw them in book 24, so it's been a little bit of a while. I think we did have an intermediate stop with them later on. But book 24 was back when these books weren't even ghost-written. That's how long ago that was. As in book 24, we do get little snippets of the logbook of the Helmacrons, which in this book is listed as the Helmacron females, because it seems that conflict has broken out between the male and female Helmacrons, somewhat caused by the Animorphs in a previous book. Suffice to say, both parties want the blue box. The Helmacrons make some more demands, zip around the barn, and fly into a freezer chest, which is where Cassie has hidden the blue box. If you will recall, the last time the Helmacrons were here, the Animorphs made a deal with them that they could use the blue box to fuel up, but then they would leave. It is evident that that did not happen. But no time to dwell on what honour even means anymore. The Helmacrons are cutting into the freezer chest. Marco and Rachel both dash to try and get the Helmacrons, but Marco slips and knocks his head on the freezer chest, which is not good. It hurts a lot and he is not well. It's a little bit Rachel's fault, but there's no time to dwell on that because the Helmacrons are escaping. The ship itself is not moving, so Rachel grabs it, but Tobias's Hawkeyes realise that all the Helmacrons have indeed left the ship and are heading towards Marco, who is now prone on the floor. Yeah, they've gone up Marco's nose. Newsflash, I said, keep threatening us and you'll never get off Earth alive. Brave Helmacron females care nothing for their own safety, the voice shouted. We care only for glorious victory. As do we, the newly liberated and courageous Helmacron males, came another voice. The Animorphs really gave them another reason to fight each other. They were already quite a fighty species. Marco then wakes up, and they have to tell him what no friend wants to tell another friend, that they've been taken hostage by teeny tiny aliens who have infested their body. They've marched inside you like an episode of the Magic School Bus. Jake is the first to come up with a plan. Good job, Jake, you're the leader. Eric is going to go and do surveillance on the kid so they can bring back Axe, because they're really going to need his expertise here. This does mean that in the meantime they can't follow the kid, but they've got bigger problems. Cassie made a face. Smallest morph? I guess a flea is small enough to get into the nasal passages. It might be tight though. Maybe a tick? Ticks are useless in battle, I said. Excuse me, Marco cried. Are you planning to have a battle in my nose? The battle for Minas Tirith. More like the battle for Marco's nose. Cassie's plan is to use the Helmacron ship, powered up by the cube, to use their shrinking technology to make themselves small enough to go into Marco's nose. Axe and Tobias come back at that exact same moment and they agree, yep, seems like a great plan. And then Marco says what I already said, which is that this is like the Magic School Bus. It's 42 books in, I'm pretty able to predict these now. They also realise that the Helmacrons are yet another species that know that the Animorphs are actually humans and could tell the Yeeks on them. It's not good. so many people knowing this. So yeah, they've really got no choice but to go in after the Hellmacrons. They need to stop them at all costs. With Marco's consent, they get ready to head into the nose. Axe uses his superior alien knowledge to get the Hellmacron ship working, and more importantly, to get the shrinking ray working. Rachel goes over to chat to Marco, who's feeling a bit down about the whole thing. It's no fun when all your friends get to go on a mission and you're left behind. And also, the Animorphs are going to be even more outnumbered if Marco doesn't go. He says, hey, well, you guys are all inside me, I guess. I'm going to go and deal with the kid. But Jake says, hey, maybe don't do that. Don't take risks on your own. That would be a bad idea. Axe also says the very sensible thing of maybe don't morph into anything else while we're inside you. Just maybe. The 5 non-Marco Animorphs get huddled together as Marco uses the shrinking ray on them, and they start to get very small. After all this time, you would think being very small is no big deal compared to all the bugs they've been, but in this case, being a human and being very small is extra worse because you've got none of the adaptations of small creatures and all of the existential dread. Rachel has another bit of a stress when she realises that morphing small you can control. You can stop being small pretty much any time, but being tiny Rachel, she has no way to stop that happening. Then they get even smaller, small enough to see sound waves. That's too small, guys. This is different to when they were shrunk in book 24. Cassie realises something is wrong. And in a rare Animorphs event, we don't see this very often in the main series, we have a perspective shift. We move from Rachel to Marco. It's all very cheery here as Marco is pondering whether he ought to create some kind of last will and testament in case everything goes wrong. Axe, the only one who can, thought speaks to Marco. He lets him know that something has gone wrong and none of them can hear him. They can see the sound waves, but they cannot hear him. Axe instructs Marco to pick them all up and pop them in his nose, which he would willingly do if he could see them because, yeah, he's lost them. They're too small. In the end, he spots them by hearing Tobias scream. I forgot that he can also hear Tobias. That makes life a little bit easier. And he can also see a spitting beetle, which must be threatening them somewhat. He spies grains of sand that might be his friends and he throws the beetle away. But he's still not sure how to pick up the tiny Animorphs. Back to Rachel's perspective, just after the beetle incident has happened, she comes up with the ingenious plan for all of them to hop onto a singular piece of hay and for Marco to shove that up his nose. It's a little gross, but it does work. You know, Jake said thoughtfully, I think this is the most disgusting mission we've ever done. Something about being inside Marco makes me feel like a yerk. I hadn't thought about it that way. Double ick. Inside the nose, there's no sign of the Hellmacrons, and they decide to morph to something with wings, which will make it a little bit easier to get around, and a little bit more secretive as well. I can't remember which book it was where we discussed the dangers of morphing small when you're already small, presumably book 24, but that seems to have gone out the window here. They fly through Marco, and eventually they can hear the Hellmacrons arguing in the distance. Surprise, surprise. Another sign of what is wrong, the Hellmacrons look really big, like huge. Working theory from Jake is that the tiny Hellmacrons decided to sabotage their own shrinking ray so that the Animorphs couldn't follow them through and fight them. It's a good plan. And it worked. Thankfully, the Hellmacrons' wisdom seems to be selective as they don't look up and see the birds circling overhead. The Hellmacrons are circled around a female who they're saying is stuck in something and can't get out. Cassie figures the Hellmacrons have found some of Marco's mucus, which is doing its intended purpose and has managed to stick one of them. Gusts of wind start blowing through the nose and the Hellmacrons start running and yelling. Get in the snot, Jake yelled. What? No way! This is going to be fun to edit. I'm going to have to relive these sentences so many times. They watch from within their snot piles as one of the Hellmacrons is forced out of the nose, screaming about how they're going to get their revenge. In case you didn't understand, we've just witnessed a sneeze from within. Back to Marco's perspective, he's on his bike, he's heading home, he's planning to contact the Chi if he hasn't heard anything by dinner. In a moment of stress and indecision, Marco decides, actually no, I'm not going home. I'm going to go to the kids' apartment. This feels like a bad idea, but you know, it's a book. It's an okay plan, except if anything goes wrong, he can't morph to get out of it. Because, you know, he's got friends inside him. In fact, Marco decides he can just climb up the fire escape of the building and take the cube. Burglars do it, why can't he? He checks in with the Chi, who is watching the building, disguised as a homeless man, and then heads around the back. Maybe the kid was just a kid, some bored guy who wanted to be a photographer. Well, if that was true, it was time someone taught him to stay out of alleyways late at night. Very strange Batman origin story indeed. What's odd is that the whole block seems to be deserted, which is extra weird given it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday. He tries to grab the fire escape, which comes down with a clatter, which should reveal his presence, but all he sees is a twitching of curtains on the 3rd floor. Now he's not only concerned that this could be a yerk trap, but also that the actual human police could turn up. But why not be impulsive on a day like today? There's nothing else going on, so he climbs up the fire escape. He gets on up there, sees the disposable camera sat on a desk behind a thankfully broken window that he can climb through. He hears a sound that is all too familiar to both Marco and me, the click of little doggy feet on non-carpeted floors. The dog, which is a pit bull, and now I don't agree that we should demonise particular dog breeds. I don't think it's helpful, I don't think it's fair, I think it leads to a lot of problems. Let's just agree that this particular pit bull, through no fault of the breed as a whole, is horrible, or indeed just a good guard dog, and is therefore not happy to see Marco at all. Marco bats the dog away with a baseball bat, I have concerns, and continues trying to get to the camera. He's been bitten by the dog, but he wraps a t-shirt from the room around his punctured arm, and decides this isn't the time. He can't go for the camera right now. He makes it down the fire escape and across the lot, hearing police sirens, and what's worse, he feels a tickling in his nose, puts his hand up, and he's bleeding a little bit on the inside. It's probably fine, right? Back to Rachel in the studio, by which I mean inside the nose. The Animorphs' bird forms aren't doing so hot, so they apply the magic of morphing powers in order to reset their DNA. They discuss what, if any, advantages they have over the Helmacrons right now. They can sneak up on them. They can also morph creatures with good night vision, so that might be helpful. Jake calls for battle morphs, but ones with good eyes, so Rachel heads to a, still very small, but larger than she was, elephant. It's still only the size of a cat to the Helmacrons though. That's the scale we're working with here. They head to right under the Helmacrons and Jake employs their signature negotiating style. Surrender now! Surrender and we'll let you live as our defiled beasts of burden. Resist us and we'll sneeze in your general direction. The Helmacrons just cheer at the fact that the Animorphs fell into their trap. Negotiating seems to be a flop, so they decide to head into battle, aiming for minimal damage to Marco's insides. I stepped off the boot, then rammed my tusks straight into it. The Helmacron didn't flinch. He didn't bleed. He was, however, annoyed. This causes the Helmacron to do exactly what they don't want him to do, which is to fire a Draken beam, welling up some nastiness in Marco's nose. Jake redoubles the negotiation, and they even say that if they stop Marco's heart, they're never going to get access to the blue box. They check in with Axe, and yeah, stopping Marco's heart is something the Helmacrons could do with low-powered Draken beams. Axe suggests a classic Helmacron double-cross, where they say they'll give them the box, and then when it comes down to it and everyone's out, they won't do that. Unfortunately, the Helmacrons are wise to this and decide to leave half of their party inside Marco until the exchange is done. When Jake says no to this, the Helmacrons decide to run away, further into Marco. They're heading towards some kind of precipice. Rachel tries to grab onto one of the Helmacrons to stop him, but that just ends up pulling her over the edge too. She falls down. What Cassie tells her is Marco's esophagus. The grossness just continues. Rachel can hear the thunk of Marco's heart and can smell the less than nice stomach contents that are going on here. She's fallen into stomach acid, also not nice. Rachel uses her elephant instincts to get her trunk above the stuff that she's in and get out of there. Unfortunately, the Helmacrons spot her and start firing Draken beams. She can hear the Helmacrons arguing about whether to go through the left or right wall, which Rachel can't do anything much about now because she's literally being digested. She yells to see where Cassie is and they're on their way, but they had to change morph first. By the time they get there, Rachel has been blinded by the acid, but she can hear their bat morphs above her. She tells them what I don't think they needed to know, which is to stay away from both the acid and the aliens with guns. The only way to get back out of there is to get to birdmorph and fly out the way they came. It's not a good idea to go further in for obvious reasons. Unfortunately, to do that, Rachel needs to demorph, which means being human in this stomach acid, which is going to be even less fun. Prince Jake, I believe we have a problem, Axe was saying. I'm not sure we can go back the way we came. Some sort of circular muscle has closed off the passageway. A sphincter! Cassie, of course. Lots of sphincters in the human body, as it happens. They also spot that a couple of Helmacrons are dead and digested, which I hope they don't mention to Marco later. I feel like that would be unpleasant to know. Rachel grits her teeth against the pain and focuses on getting to Batmorph. With the Helmacrons firing at them, Cassie gets to Whale Morph inside the stomach and urges Rachel to climb onto her, whale skin being a bit tougher than human skin. I'm beginning to think this mission was foolish, Axe said, glancing with stalk eyes at the patch of burned fur on his hindquarters. Marco's body seems to be doing an excellent job of defending itself. Axe reminds us, because the Animorphs can't keep killing people, that the Helmacrons are a fungible species, which means that when they die, their minds are absorbed by the hive mind. It's all good. So they aren't dead, but probably not ideal to have them inside you. They are being shot at by Helmacrons right now, and Cassie is quite a large target, so guys, what is the plan? Axe says they should morph to shark to take down the Helmacrons, but the Helmacrons are cutting into the stomach wall, behind which is a blood vessel, which surely the Helmacrons won't be able to breathe in, right? So it's probably fine. But the Helmacrons slice through and head into the blood vessel, which is very weird and can't be nice for Marco. To victory! Slush is the word in the book. Another Helmacron disappeared through the stomach lining. To glory! Slush. Another gone. To the beating organ! Slush. Another. Now there are only 5 left. That's right, the Helmacrons have headed into Marco's bloodstream. The Helmacrons keep announcing things and going through the stomach flap until there are only 2 left. Axe then realises that pointing out that the Helmacrons might die isn't super helpful because there is oxygen in the bloodstream. That's kind of one of the things it does. You kind of have to be a fish to breathe in there, but maybe the Helmacrons have special adaptations that mean they can do that. Let's say yes. So yes, the Animorphs are going to have to follow the tiny aliens, and the only valid morph is shark. Marco is going to have shark blood for some of this book. I didn't write it, but tiny sharks in your blood does feel like a terrible horror movie plot, and I'm kind of here for it. Is it worth doing? They conclude that yes it is. The Helmacrons could be working for the Yeerks for all they know. They need to stop them. The difficulty with Shark Morph is that their instincts are famously quite difficult to control. Sure enough, as soon as Rachel gets to Shark, she's focused on the blood and where it's coming from, and can I eat that? Rachel, before she can even stop herself, bites Jake, and Cassie suggests they all get focused so they can actually help in this situation. They head on through the blood vessels, and yes, they can breathe, because science. All sorts of stuff travels in the blood, Cassie said. Food particles, waste, hormones. Hormones, Jake interrupted. We're swimming in hormones? And what else do they see? A strange, spiky shape that gets eaten by some other kind of blob. It looks like Marco's immune system is doing its job right in front of them. They follow the trail of the Helmacrons until they can hear their voices, but they reach the end of a vein before they can find them. It's a bit of a maze, the human body, and they don't know where to turn. I'm sorry if you can hear a howling dog in the background. It's not my dog. I don't know why that dog is doing that. Through examining the various bits and bobs around them, they conclude that they must be in the liver and that Marco's body is filtering them out as impurities, which is mean but fair. They're headed for the colon if they're not careful. Their only option is to swim for the heart, which is above the liver, so I guess we go up. Cassie, the genius, suggests that instead of trying to work out what direction things are in, they follow the blood cells, which must be going around. Follow the blood cells, you'll get there eventually. Back to Marco's house. He has got home and he's put his sweater on so that his dad won't see the bite mark from the dog from his burglary attempt earlier. He does throw some antiseptic cream on it though, thank goodness. First aid. And I had no idea what was going on inside me. Hours passed and all I heard from my friends was occasional strange orders. Don't sneeze, don't eat or drink anything. But it's good to know they are communicating. Marco contacts Mr. King to let him know that the Chi, who disguise themselves as Animorphs, need to go in on their behalf so the parents don't get suspicious. And Marco tells his dad he's too sick to have dinner, because he can't eat because there are Animorphs inside him. Marco finally gets to sleep, but wakes up feeling sweaty and angry and too fussed and too riled up to leave things alone. His dad pops his head around the door and says that he and Nora, his new wife, are going out for dinner. Marco waits a couple of minutes for them to leave, then goes and grabs a steak out of the freezer and heads back to the apartment. The steak does stop the dog from attacking Marco again, and he's almost at the camera when he hears voices in the corridor. The dog gets up, blocking his exit. Door, people, cops, juvie hall, window, Cujo. 2 options, both bad. Either way I was going to get caught. Back to Rachel and the others swimming towards the loud noise of the heart, everyone getting a little bit overwhelmed by the situation. They know that the blood cells have less and less oxygen in them as they head back to the heart, which is sciencey stuff, but it is also making it harder for the sharks to swim. There's no turning back now, they need to make sure that Marco lives. They get sucked into an opening just outside of Marco's heart where they can see his valves, which is unpleasant. I won't describe it to you in the way the book does. They have to assume that the Helmacrons are inside the heart, and they are in danger of being pushed out through to the other side. No time to think, just be ready to fight. They go into the heart. In the heart they can hear the Helmacrons arguing over whether to use a high or low Draken beam setting to set off Marco's heart rhythm and kill him, basically. Obey me, foolish male. Draken beams will only fire in liquid if you increase the power to full. I grow weary of your meddling female. I will blast on low if I choose. Jake tells them to get out of there and leave Marco alone. We'll let you go. We won't hurt you. You can even use the power source to charge up your ship. But the Helmacrons don't play dice and they shoot at Marco's heart. Rachel can't see the Helmacrons, but she can smell them and she's ready to defend her friend. There are 5 Helmacrons in the heart and Rachel begins to swim towards them. The walls around me closed in as Marco's heart prepared to beat. Tissue. Turn another left. Push, push, push. The shark was exhausted, and the Helmacron smell was only the faintest bit stronger. Thump. The first part of Marco's heartbeat. The heartbeat that might be his last. The drama. Back to Marco's perspective, and the female voice outside the door asks, hey, what's wrong with Buster? Which is apparently the dog's name, which is a very nice name for what is a less than pleasant dog, it would seem. Like me, upon making a personal revelation, Marco leaps into the closet to hide. It's just a little gay joke for you there. He makes a lot of noise that whoever was in the hallway definitely heard. Now, Marco promised that he wouldn't morph, but Buster is attacking him in the closet, so he might not have any other options. A little voice in my head, that intangible but incredibly annoying thing called a conscience, was concerned. Marco, it said, can't you see something is wrong with you, with what you're doing? Where's your compassion? It's just a dumb dog doing what he's supposed to. And your friends, their lives are valuable. Roach, I answered. He is spotted as a very large cockroach by the woman in the corridor, and he can now hear the others thought speaking about how Marco is in trouble. Marco, cut it out now, Rachel screamed. That's an order, Jake shouted. My friends were still alive, and they sounded terrified. Good for them. Shark Rachel was fighting a Helmacron when they all start to get swept away by what they now know is Marco morphing to Roach. Marco manages the morph, and the Animorphs are stuck inside a narrow passage inside Marco, I guess. Marco refuses to tell Jake just what he thinks he's doing. But before they can dig too far into that, the Helmacrons, who are also somehow still alive, fire through the edge of Marco to escape, and they don't hear from Marco anymore. Next, I heard Tobias's voice. Who would have predicted this? Who would have thought the Helmacrons were more dangerous than the Yeerks? Not me, that's for sure. As we know, Rachel is at her most vicious when she is angry and defending her friends, so she's ready to fight now. Rachel attacks and tells the others to grab Draken beams from the fallen Helmacrons. No point playing nice now if Marco's already dead. We'll tunnel through to the lungs, I said. You and Axe get inside, demorph, and turn that beam on them. The rest of us will bite a few holes in these creeps. I mean, it's an option, and now that the Animorphs have weapons, the Helmacrons seem a little bit more keen on that old negotiation thing. The Animorphs have the usual split of kill them and let them surrender, and they end up going with the let them surrender option. They let them live if they can get all out of Marco and unshrink the Animorphs. They all demorph and leave behind what was left of Marco. Marco, my fellow warrior, and yeah, even friend. Gone forever. Killed. Not by the Yeerks, as we all half expected to be, but by a race of tiny egomaniacs. There was no justice, poetic or otherwise, in that. But of course, they've emerged not in the barn, but in a closet, and they can't get back to the Helmacron ship from here. Look on the bright side, I said manically, desperately. We're useless to the Yeerks. We're much too small to be controllers now. Useless to humans too, Jake snapped. We can't fight Vista 3 when we're the size of a shredded fingernail clipping. Jake does a quick scout, realises they're in a closet, incorrectly assumes it is Marco's closet. They can just about make out what's left of Marco as a roach on the floor. Cassie gets them to focus up. Nothing kills a roach. That means Marco might still be alive. If he's still within the morphing limit, there's hope. They start yelling at Marco to demorph and fix himself, and just as the last sliver of hope begins to fade away, the roach leg twitches and he begins to morph. And in the last few chapters of the book, Marco morphs to girl, grabs everyone, grabs the camera off the desk, flies them all out of there back to the barn. They get unshrunk. Grown. Something. Words. Cassie's concerned that Marco didn't have anyone look at that dog bite, but hey, he morphed now, it's fine, it's all fixed. And they plan on burning that film the first chance they can get. Thank goodness it's not the digital camera era. Promise us you'll never come back to Earth, Jake said as the Helmacrons hovered in front of the barn door. You have our word as honourable female servants of the Helmacron Empire. A Helmacron male would never lie. But of course, the Helmacrons try and take the box with them with a tractor beam because of who they are as aliens. Thankfully, they're quite small, and this time Rachel and Marco manage to grab the box together, and no one hits their head. Cassie hides it again, as ever, not telling anyone where it is, because now is not the time. Back at home and doing homework, Rachel takes a moment to look up what that spiky thing inside Marco was, and sure enough, it was rabies. He got rabies from that dog. Without morphing, he definitely would have died, because rabies is bad. And she also realises that potentially having rabies may have affected Marco's judgment and made him morph with them inside him and almost killed everyone. That must be the reason. This was good news. Marco wasn't dying, and with this interesting piece of information, I could get him off the hook with Jake and the others. I searched for the phone, stopped, smirked. Maybe in the morning. That was very weird. That was a weird book. That one was weird. I feel like 90s and early 2000s and going inside the human body was a big thing. Like, I can remember doing a human body walkthrough kind of thing when I went to visit the Millennium Dome back in the millennium. So I think that just, it feels very quintessentially late 90s, early noughties to me. I will also say that the Animorphs wiki, you guys are wild, whoever's updating this. The Animorphs raid a factory disguised by the Yeerks to be a Dunkin' Donuts factory in order to hide in plain sight. Dunkin' Donuts did not have any locations in the western United States, specifically California, where the series takes place, until 2014. The series at this point is taking place in 1999 to 2000. Honestly, fact-checking. None of it. If you like this video and you want to stick around and see more, please do subscribe. I'm catching up on Animorphs. It's going to be a bit slow to begin with, but we are going to finish sort of midway through next year, I still believe. So please stick around. We've got another 10, 12, 15 or so books left to go, and it's getting towards the end game. Things are exciting. So yes, subscribe if you want to see more of those. If you want to come hang out on Discord or Twitter, where we can have chill chats about books, that's linked below. I have a dedicated Animorphs channel. Also, my Patreon is linked below if you would like to join their number. There are some lovely people who support the channel and get early access to my videos and exclusive bonus content. If you want to join their number, link. There you go. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one.
There's gonna be some bloopers now.
I have terrible pins and needles, everything is terrible. I've got friends on the inside. Right, we're gonna do a cheeky switcheroo.